Hi, I'm Dave Jones from Instinctive Solutions on behalf of AIM International, and I'd like to welcome you to this briefing for our State of Industry report for 2023. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our underwriters for this project. You can see the list on screen at the moment, and without their assistance, these reports quite simply wouldn't be what they are today. I'd urge you to take a look at the website of each and every one of our underwriters, whose participation really showcases their commitment to this industry, and we genuinely do appreciate their support. So let's dive into the briefing itself. And for me, this really is a great year to be exploring the findings from the Industry Watch. As you know, AIM produces research on a regular basis, and the Industry Watch program itself has been running for many years. And way back in 2013, a commitment was made to investigate the state of the industry on a recurring basis, with consistent questions being asked to the AIM community every 5 years or so. You can see the report covers on the screen at the moment from 2013, from 2018, and from the current report obviously produced in 2023. The point of using consistent questioning across these reports is to allow us to identify how the industry has changed across the last 10 years. And the results are incredibly interesting, as we'll see in the next few slides. So, as you might expect, over the last 10 years, some things have changed. And the first change of note really is the language or the terminology that we use to describe what we do in this industry. The front cover of that 2013 report talked about ECM at a crossroads. Well, ECM in 2023 is a term that's fallen massively out of favour compared to where it was. This, of course, was helped by the analyst community changing up the terminology way back in 2017 from ECM to content services. However, ironically, content services doesn't even make our top 10 list of terms that the practitioners use to describe their craft. The terms that are in vogue now are much more practical. Terms like information management, records management, even still document management. What's equally interesting is the conversation about what it is that we're actually managing, or the term that we use to describe what we're actually managing. I've lost count really of the number of times that I've been involved in discussions about whether we should talk about information or content or data or records or whatever it happens to be. So we asked our survey respondents which term they use. Now, interestingly, for this survey, we wanted to avoid any bias. So we actually surveyed both a traditional AIM audience and a non-AIM audience of general business users. And for the AIM audience, the primary term used by a long way is information, followed then by data and content. For the wider business community, however, there's a bit of a shift. Whether we like it or not as information management professionals, 40% of the wider world use the term data to describe what it is they manage versus 28% who use information. Now, while this might not seem like a huge difference, it is important to recognize those nuances in language when we're communicating with those different audiences. The second major area of change is the actual technologies that we're using to manage our information and data. Over the past 10 years, we've obviously seen the introduction of a whole raft of new technologies in areas such as low-code development, mobile apps, intelligent document processing or IDP, robotic process automation or RPA, and of course artificial intelligence, which is right up the top of that list of trends at the moment. And our respondents validated that they're using a lot of the more traditional technologies, things such as encryption, optical character recognition or OCR, and content and data migration. On the flip side, some of the technologies that have come through are still to be adopted by the masses. So things like RPA and low-code development. Both are regarded as some of the hottest new tech in recent years, but they're coming through to our industry slightly slower for some of our organizations. But of course, while some things have changed, as the song says, some things remain just the same. And one of the concerning areas that remains is what I call the silo effect. The fact that information management tools are still not connecting well to the other line of business applications that exist within the enterprise. Regularly, business tools such as CRM and collaboration are only integrated to documents, records, and enterprise content management systems for just over 1 in 4 organizations, and that's not enough. For all of those line of business apps that we asked about, more are not integrated to information management systems than are. And that fact means that users are still having to scrabble around and work harder than they should do just to find and use the information that they need to get their work done. Another area that remains consistent is the emphasis on compliance as a primary goal or driver for the use of information management. However, what has changed is the distance between compliance and the next most important goal. In previous years, cost and productivity and digital transformation have both been on a par with compliance. However, in 2023, compliance ranks head and shoulders above anything else for the core business, departmental, and individual goals. We can surmise why, right? Perhaps we're feeling the after effects of the speed at which COVID fueled digital transformation. Perhaps it's because we're in the middle of some tough economic times. Either way, compliance is king for 2023. And the final element of consistency across this 10-year timescale that we're looking at is that we're still making progress with regards to the automation of our core business processes. We're getting there, but we're still not entirely happy with the results. As you can see from the screen, in areas such as supply chain, records management, and legal contract management, people are pretty happy that they've got above average process automation. That's great. However, around a third of folks also feel that they've got below average automation in areas such as the digital mailroom and employee onboarding and file management. There's obviously still some work to be done there. All of these data points really are just precursors for the 3 key observations coming out of the research. And the first observation that we've got is that digital transformation is now over 50% complete, or there's been significant digital transformation for 2/3 of organizations. Now, looking back to 2013, digital transformation wasn't even a term that we talked about. It certainly was by 2018, where 46% of organizations considered that they'd had that significant digital transformation. So we've gone from 46% to 65% from 2018 to 2023. That's a pretty good jump for 5 years. However, looking deeper into this area, you see that digital transformation had a huge spike during COVID, through necessity, of course. But since then, projects are slowing, to the point that you could argue that digital transformation has actually somewhat stalled. And the reasons for that stall are scarily familiar. A lack of budget and resources, a lack of a true strategy for information management, and an immature digital culture. These 3 roadblocks are consistent from last year, and they pose a significant challenge to the continued completion of digital transformation projects within organizations. The COVID pandemic drove digital transformation forward immensely, and it'll be a real shame if that progress now falls backwards in the post-COVID landscape. So to avoid that, as information management professionals, we need to find a way to discuss information management at a higher level within the business. If we can align with topics such as cybersecurity and data privacy, then we'll get better awareness, better visibility throughout the business, and hopefully better access to that budget that actually does exist. But a word of caution, focusing only on some of the defensive aspects of information management, things like compliance and risk, is a little bit dangerous. If we open the conversation to explore the wider productivity gains, increased insight, and the broader value of good information governance, then our feeling is that the business will be much more accepting. The second observation reflects on a statistic that frequently gets used all across our industry, right? The number of information management systems that organizations use. Again, this question's been asked across the past 10 years, But despite our best efforts to consolidate systems and upgrade legacy applications and do all of the modernization that we've been through, the number of information management systems we use keeps on growing. Look at the data. The number of organizations using 1, 2, or 3 systems has gone down, which sounds great, right? Unfortunately, the number using more than 3 systems is skyrocketing upwards. 3.6% of enterprises were using between 7 and 10 systems way back in 2013. That rose from 3.6 to 6% in 2018, and it's now at 14% in 2023. That's approximately 100% growth every 5 years. So is it really surprising that we still find ourselves in somewhat of a state of information chaos? Well, that said, we now live in the era of cloud apps and point solutions that exist for many of our information management related business challenges, which means actually that having more systems is not necessarily an issue if it's solving a problem. But there's one condition to that, and that's that the new systems that we implement are actually integrated to the other systems within the business, both other information management systems and line of business applications. If they're not, then we're simply adding another information silo into the mix, and we're actually creating more of a governance issue than we're actually solving. Put simply, let's carefully evaluate the need for new systems and ensure that any new ones that are deployed are integrated into that wider information ecosystem. And our final observation is actually a new area of research for AIM. We've never before asked the age of our respondents, but this year we did, and we're really glad that we did, because it turns out that the information management audience, or at least the AIM audience, is heavily weighted to the over 30s. In fact, almost half of our audience is over 45, with the majority of the rest aged between 30 and 44. This may not come as a surprise to you. Information management is a technical profession after all, right? It takes many years to develop skills in. That said, the low number of under 30s raises some areas of concern as we move forward. And really, to ensure the future success of the profession, we need new entrants to the workforce. And many of those should come from the younger demographic. Perhaps we need to define a clearer and more continued professional development ecosystem for both new entrants and established practitioners, explicitly defining career paths much better than we do now. If we can put those in place, great. If we don't, then the industry runs the risk of a severe skill shortage in this area within the next 5 to 10 years. Now, as organizations and professionals within this space, we've all got a responsibility to develop that next generation of information management professionals. Now, many of your existing team, wherever you work, are a wealth of knowledge, right? Let's find ways to identify and share their experience with peers and newer hires. Let's find ways to nurture the successes in this industry so that we can ensure the long-term information management capabilities within all of our organizations. As the report highlights, this really is a pivotal moment for all of us. As an industry and as individuals, we've now got a choice to make, right? Do we want to rest on our laurels, continue as we are, improving in some areas, lacking in others, but largely maintaining the status quo? Or do we want to refocus our efforts on leveraging the new technologies and practices that are coming into the space? And more than anything else, do we focus on creating an encouraging, engaging, and attractive environment for the next generation of information management professionals? The choice is ours. And that draws us to the end of this analyst briefing. I'd like to thank our underwriters again for being involved in the project, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today. The report provides a wonderful illustration of how the information management industry has changed and evolved over the past 10 years. But also it gives us a good look forward at what we all need to do to ensure the success of this industry in the next 10 years. I'd urge you to download the report, Give it a good read, and then, of course, make up your own mind and make your own decisions about how you leverage the findings. Thank you once again for joining us. This has been Dave Jones from Instinctive Solutions on behalf of AIIM International.